Chapter 39. Fall of the Kirijo Group. For November 2009. Hamuko was mildly surprised to see her brother already brushing his teeth.
Nisan, you woke up on your own?
Minato gurgled some water before spitting into the sink.
Pharaoh's woke me up.
He shrugged, pointing to the smiling boy on his bed.
We were waiting for you.
The red-eyed girl blinked as she noticed their young friend.
Good morning.
She smiled at him, closing the door behind her.
Good morning.
Pharaoh nodded to her.
This is the first time we've talked during the daytime.
He stared out the window and enjoyed the sunshine.
Nice weather, isn't it? This is indeed a new day. For all of us.
He stood up and brightly smiled at the twins.
All the fragments of my memory. They've finally come together. I now know my role clearly. Your role?
Minato blinked as he recalled the hangman shadow saying something similar. Pharaoh nodded as he frowned.
The time has come. As difficult as it may be, I must tell you something. I am afraid this is goodbye. I want you to know. For me, our friendship was a miracle. But miracles don't last forever.
He looked up at the two and tried to give them his best smile.
If only they did.
Minato sadly frowned at the young boy.
It doesn't matter.
He sighed.
You're right.
The blue-eyed boy nodded.
What's important is that it happened. That's true, but it's not exactly what I meant.
The older boy shook his head.
I mean, there is no forever.
Pharaoh tilted his head to the side.
Maybe you're right. Even if there was a thing as eternity, how would we ever know? It would be the same as if it didn't exist.
Hamuko knelt down in front of the boy and sadly stared into his blue eyes.
So, we can't see you anymore.
Pharaoh gave her a comforting hug.
I shall treasure our conversations always.
He told her.
Even if today's the end, the bond between us can never be severed.
Tears filled his eyes as he continued to smile.
Remember that.
Hamuko returned his hug and nodded before getting back up.
I miss you, Pharaoh's.
She told him.
Even if Nisan won't admit it, he'll miss you too.
Minato smirked at the younger boy.
Take care of yourself.
He nodded. Pharaoh lightly laughed at the twins.
It was fun while it lasted.
He slowly faded away.
Farewell.
The twins saw a bright flash of light as both Orpheus appeared before them. They quickly combined, and the Reaper persona they first summoned bowed its head to them.
Thou art I, and I am thou. From the sea of thy souls I cometh.
It flexed a bit, resulting in the coffins floating behind it to clatter.
I am Thanatos, god of death. From now until the end, I will walk by your sides, masters of light and shadow. Thanatos.
Hamuko stared as the great persona split itself up and returned to them both. She closed her eyes and tried to search for her old persona, but she ended up shaking her head.
I can't find Orpheus anywhere.
Minato tried to do the same thing.
I think they're gone.
He frowned.
Just like Pharaoh's.
He approached his window and stared at the school.
I didn't think we could lose a persona, but I guess we're no longer Orpheus.
Hamuko stood at her brother's side and frowned.
That's good, right? It means we've changed since then. Just like Akihiko-senpai, Ken-kun, and Fuka-chan. But why are we Thanatos?
Minato shook his head.
We went from fools to death. I don't know whether that's progress or not. Well, I still think we're fools.
The brunette Riley smiled.
I still sense the other personas we have. Theo once told me that the wild card ability is something unique to fools.
She looked out the window and smiled at the new day. Minato did the same and blinked when he noticed something different with the school.
Ah!
He hurried to the window to get a better look and frowned. Hamuko cast her gaze towards Gekiken too.
Nisan? Is something wrong? It's gone.
The blue-haired boy muttered.
The Reaper cloud is gone.
His sister's eyes widened in surprise.
Does that mean we really... I think so.
Minato breathlessly said. A smile appeared on his face as he ecstatically grabbed his school bag.
I've got to tell Fuka. This is fantastic.
Hamuko laughed as she went after her brother.
Nissan, so that...
She closed his bedroom door behind her and paused as she noticed her watch. She smiled to herself before bringing her wrist up to her lips.
Jinshi-kun. We really did it.
She sadly frowned as it slowly dawned on her that if Minato lost his Reapers, she also loses her ability to see spirits. I guess this is goodbye. A strange loneliness filled her, but as soon as she looked up towards her brother, she noticed he was happily speaking to his girlfriend at the end of the hall. The way his blue eyes shone with life was enough to prompt Hamuko to quickly shake off whatever sadness was trying to fester within her, since she didn't want to ruin such a momentous occasion for Minato. This is what I've always wanted, she sternly reminded herself. Everything I've done was all for the sake of freeing Nissan from his Reapers. Hamuko stared at her brother for a few seconds as the older twin began laughing in a clear, joyous tone. The younger twin smiled to herself at the sight before deciding to join the two juniors on their way to school. Minato's eyes grew wide as he saw the spread of sushi laid out on the table. Wow. Today just keeps getting better and better. He counted out the various slices of fish being served as his smile continued to grow wider with each passing second.
Whoa.
Junpei was just as eager as their leader to start.
Nice spread. The slices are huge.
Yukari commented in awe.
Man.
Junpei smirked at the team.
I'm starving. Can we eat?
Ken looked around the lounge.
Hey, where are Aiga-san and Ikitsuki-san?
Minato paused and looked around, but Akihiko shook his head as he set out the plates.
He took her to the lab for a tune-up or something.
The boxer explained.
He said they'd join us later.
The blue-haired boy's smile faded. So that's not suspicious at all. He stared back at the sushi. But with the dark hour and Reapers gone, what can he expect to do now?
Well, if he's not here.
Minato smirked as he impatiently grabbed a plate and pair of chopsticks.
That just means it's more for us.
Fuka giggled at her boyfriend.
The chairman just can't stay away from the lab, can he?
Everyone paused as they heard a car stop outside the dorm. They heard various doors slam shut and Mitsuru quickly approached the front entrance.
That must be my father,
she seriously stated, though a twinge of nervousness managed to make itself known as she opened the door to let the head of the Kyojo group in. Behind him were two bodyguards in suits. The redhead nodded to her father with a smile.
We've been waiting for you. So, it's over at last, huh?
Takeharu seemed to be smiling.
Yes.
Mitsuru nodded, trying her best to keep the immense pride she had over their accomplishments toned down.
Congratulations, everyone.
The man turned to the children.
You've done well. There are no words to express my gratitude. Though you will never receive the recognition you deserve, it is undoubtedly a monumental achievement.
Akihiko smiled at that.
Thank you.
Takeharu carefully approached Shikari and took her hand.
To you, I owe a special thanks for lending us your power until the very end. Oh, it's...
Yukari tried to put on a smile.
It's no big deal.
Takeharu released her hand and cast his eyes over everyone else.
The 12 shadows that were the cause of all our troubles have been destroyed, thanks to your efforts. You needn't bear this burden any longer.
He frowned to himself.
You deserve a chance to experience the joys of youth. The specialized extracurricular execution squad will be dissolved as of midnight tonight. No longer must you put your lives on the line in battle. Tomorrow, you can triumphantly return to a normal school life.
The party turned to each other in surprise, and Takeharu immediately noticed their discontent frowns.
Is something the matter? Oh.
Akihiko tried to smile.
It's nothing.
Mitsuru shared his sentiments, but quickly turned their attention to why they were all gathered.
All right, everyone. It's time to celebrate.
She smiled to them.
Your feast awaits you. There's no need to hold back. Eat as much as you'd like.
Junpei jumped at her words.
Sweet. I've been waiting for you to say that.
Both Hamuko and Minato clapped their hands together.
Itadakimasu.
The two wore identical competitive smirks as they began devouring everything in sight. After a while, most of the food was gone. Seeing how everyone's pace was now slowing down, Junpei quickly stood up. The cat boy urgently waved a camera around.
Listen up, everyone. I have an idea.
He smirched at the entire team.
How about we all take a picture?
He frowned as he stared at his camera.
Actually, I tried to take one last night, but I forgot it wouldn't work during the dark hour.
Akihiko knit his eyebrows together.
You mean? You brought a camera with you into battle? Well, it was our last battle, after all.
Junpei smirked. Minato sighed and shook his head.
You should have said something sooner. My camera works during the dark hour.
The leader rolled his eyes.
Really?
Yukari turned to him in surprise.
So does my music player, Hamuko's music player, my laptop, Fuka's camera.
Minato listed off the things he and Fuka worked on together over the course of the year. Hamuko quickly cut him off.
Yeah, we get it, Nissan. But about that picture.
She made a rectangular frame with her hands in front of the front door and smirked.
Come line up, everyone.
Junpei walked up to one of the bodyguards.
Hey, excuse me, mister. Would you mind taking our picture?
Yukari sighed as she stood between Hamuko and Fuka.
I feel like such a tourist, but I have to admit.
She smiled at both her friends.
I kinda want a picture too.
Fuka chuckled as Mitsuru stood at her right.
I'm so glad to have a photo with Yukari-chan and Hamuko-chan. I'll treasure it.
Hamuko sternly pulled on Minato's arm as she noticed him trying to escape.
Nissan, you're standing next to me. You know I don't like being in group pictures.
Minato groaned.
It's way too claustrophobic.
He muttered. He sighed as he tried to make the most of the situation. Junpei stood behind the girls but frowned when he remembered something.
Oh, wait. Ikatsuki-san and Aigis aren't here. I guess we'll have to take another one later. Can we just hurry this up?
Minato rolled his eyes, impatiently wanting to get back to the sashimi.
All right.
The cat boy smirked.
Everyone get together.
He eagerly smiled at the girls in front of him.
Come on, squeeze tight. Everyone come in closer to me.
Akihiko frowned as he stood at the tall junior's side.
Does that include me too? No.
Junpei frowned.
Not you. Geez.
Yukari sighed.
Let's not keep this poor guy waiting all day to take the picture. Hey, we're good to go. You can take the pictures anytime.
The man holding the camera frowned as Junpei was still fidgeting in the back.
Is everyone ready? You bet.
Junpei smirked. Akihiko impatiently frowned at him.
Knock it off. Time to strike a pose.
Junpei pushed his right arm forward to do a victory sign. Fuka giggled at his antics.
Come on, quit fooling around, Junpei-kun. Knock it off, will ya?
Akihiko scolded the cat boy as he pushed the junior's arm aside.
Hey, get your hand out of my face.
Junpei tripped backwards and everyone turned to the junior in surprise. Minato heard the camera click and wryly smiled at what was probably captured. He laughed as everyone looked to their usually reserved leader in surprise. Seeing him honestly enjoying himself, the rest of C smirked to each other.
Nissan.
Hamuko smiled at her brother as everyone else went to check on the picture. He's so normal now. She frowned as she didn't know whether that was a good thing or a bad thing. Junpei frowned as he studied the shot.
Is it just me? Or did this not get my good side?
He urgently turned towards Mitsuru.
Thought we were gonna take another one once Sagi's and Nekitsuki-san come back. Alright? Yes.
Mitsuru laughed.
We hear you. I could get used to a worry-free life like this.
Koromaru backed in agreement, and Fuka filled his bowl with some grilled meat.
How about you, Kuro-chan?
She asked the dog as he cheerfully ate.
Are you glad to get all this meat?
The albino animal cheerfully yipped. Hamuko giggled as she ran her hand down the dog's back.
You deserve to eat well, too. Bye.
She glanced up at her brother, who was returning to his seat for another helping. The brunette smiled as she noticed he's never looked so relaxed before. Noticing her gaze, Minato glanced up at her and gave his sister a smile. He turned his attention to the rest of C's and was glad everyone was enjoying themselves. The celebratory mood and sense of accomplishment was great, and he wished that the party would never have to end. Junpei and the twins happily continued eating before the cat boy looked up from his plate at the rest of the team. The junior shook his head.
Ichie, how come nobody's eating? Don't tell me you're full already. Are you kidding?
Hikari looked at the three juniors incredulously.
I'm stuffed. Me too.
Fuka smiled at them.
I couldn't eat another bite.
Junpei turned towards the two seniors.
How about ye, Senpai?
Mitsuru didn't seem to feel well, and Akihiko quickly shook his head.
We're good for now,
the boxer told him.
All right then.
Junpei frowned. He smiled as Koromaru happily panted at him.
Wanna try some? Poor Moro.
The dog happily barked.
Don't give the dog raw fish.
Yukari scolded the junior.
You'll make him sick.
Koromaru whimpered in response. Junpei glanced up at the caucus Ikitsuki, and Iga still went back.
I wonder what's taking those two so long. It's almost midnight.
The minute hand finally struck midnight, and everybody paused. A familiar sickly green light covered the room, and the cat boy's eyes widened.
The hell?
Ken turned towards the two coffins standing in the center of the lounge.
The guys in suits. They've transmogrified.
Koroma angrily barked. Minato suddenly lost his appetite and put his plate down. He looked over to his sister and noticed she looked like she was going to be sick. The two shared a concerned frown. Junpei turned towards Mitsuru.
I thought we ended the dark hour. Senpai, what's going on? I don't know.
The senior replied with a frown. A grim expression appeared on Akihiko's face.
Apparently, I was right to have my doubts.
Ken nodded.
Yeah, something didn't feel right. No way.
Junpei pulled his cap down. A bell chimed in the distance, and Yukari turned towards the door.
Hey. Do you hear that? It sounds like a bell. What? Where is it coming from? Where is Ikitsuki?
Takeharu frowned, looking around.
Well?
He clenched a fist as he demanded an explanation from the chairman as to why any of this was happening.
Why is he late? He's got Igas with him, doesn't he?
Mitsuru didn't respond, resulting in Akihiko staring at her in concern.
Mitsuru.
The girl noticed his gaze and quickly stood up.
Everyone.
She began.
Prepare for battle. We're heading for Tartarus.
Fuka frowned.
To do what? I don't know.
The senior shook her head.
But that's where the sound is coming from. We have to find out what's going on.
Everyone got up and started for the familiar tower in the distance. Hamuko tensed up as she stayed close to her brother.
Isan. I know. I let my guard down too.
Minato frowned. The first to the scene, Akihiko called out to the man standing in the front of Taharis.
Ikatsuki-san.
He paused as he noticed Aigis was standing at his side. Yukari frowned.
Aigis. Why are you here?
The robot didn't respond, so Ikatsuki answered the archer.
She is here merely to fulfill her role as a weapon. Huh?
Yukari didn't quite understand.
Ikatsuki-san.
Junpei glared at the man.
What's this all about?
Akihiko clenched his fists.
You said the Dark Hour and Tartarus would disappear if we defeated the 12 Shadows.
He frowned.
That's why we fought so hard. But, now...
He faltered as he didn't know what to think. Mitsuru shook her head.
What is your intention? It was all a lie, wasn't it? You knew from the beginning that the Dark Hour wouldn't disappear. Excellent deduction, Mitsuru.
Ikatsuki smiled at her.
Unfortunately, your realization has come too late. No.
Yukari shook her head in disbelief.
You tricked us?
Ken asked.
Everything is as I planned.
The man shrugged.
It is not unexpected that the Dark Hour and Tartarus remain. In fact, I never intended for you to rid the world of them. Quite the opposite, actually.
Fuka frowned.
What do you mean?
Ikatsuki smiled as he began to explain it to them.
The 12 Shadows were part of a whole. They were destined to be reunited.
His smirk widened as he continued to stare at the children before him.
And that was accomplished in no small part.
He cruelly sneered at Minato when his gaze landed on the blue-haired junior.
Thanks to your efforts.
Minato tensed up as he realized his investigation had either been incomplete or contained faulty assumptions and information.
You manipulative bastard. Soon, Death, the Almighty, shall arise and bring forth the fall.
Ikatsuki laughed.
Death.
Ken frowned. Akihiko shook his head.
What are you talking about? The end of all shall come and free this world from despair.
Ikatsuki extended his arms to the sky.
The death of everything. But also the beginning.
He wore a madman's smile.
What is he saying?
Yukari couldn't help but shake.
Is he out of his mind? 10 years ago.
Ikatsuki looked down at them.
I, too, was a scientist for the project we've spoken of. The experiment went awry, but that is not why the Dark Hour and Tartarus were born.
He proudly looked up at the tower behind him.
They manifested as a result of harvesting the Shadow's power, just as the experiment was designed to do. That is why your grandfather gathered so many shadows.
He turned to Mitsuru.
To bring about the fall. That can't be.
Mitsuru shook her head.
People have filled the world.
The man preached.
Yet turned it into a void. The only hope of salvation lies in ruin, according to the prophecy.
Ikatsuki smiled.
The fall will be orchestrated by the prince. And once the prince has delivered us all, he shall rule the new world as king. The man who tried it 10 years ago failed. But I will not. I shall succeed. Lan.
Junpei shook his head.
He's totally lost it. I apologize for deceiving you.
Ikatsuki looked to the team and offered a hand to them.
But this was for your sake as well. If you follow me for just a little while longer, you, too, will find salvation. You call that salvation?
Fuka cried out. Hamuko agreed with her.
What's going to happen?
She demanded to know.
You'll soon see for yourself.
Ikatsuki smirked at the brunette. Yukari frowned to herself as she sensed everyone else's frustrations. Still, she took a step forward as she spoke to the man.
I have a question for you. Yes?
Ikitsuki looked at her.
In the video from my father,
The archer clenched her fists.
he said to defeat the shadows. Was that a lie, too? Oh.
Ikitsuki thought back to their trip to Yakushima.
He did record that himself. Of course.
He shrugged.
I had to make some modifications. You doctored it?
Mitsuru glared at him.
I corrected it.
He tried to convincingly say to the redhead.
Your father was a superb scientist.
He smiled at Yukari.
He may not have known it, but I truly respected him. While others focused on the shadow's abilities, he explored much more important things. But unfortunately,
Ikitsuki lowered his head in disappointment.
he could not comprehend the magnificent potential of the fall. What?
Yukari glared at the man.
He left that recording at the expense of his life.
Mitsuru told the man in disgust.
It would seem so.
Ikitsuki sighed.
But it did prove rather useful, so I'm sure he's happy.
He smiled up at them.
So you were behind it all?
Yukari angrily accused him.
He used both me and my father.
She looked at the entire team and noticed they shared her sentiments.
He used all of us.
Ikitsuki sighed and shook his head.
Used is such an ugly word. It was for the sake of the world, so how could it be wrong? Our role is to correct the mistakes of the past.
Mitsuru began as he pulls out her evoker.
And we intend to do just that.
Hamuko reached for her gun too.
I'm with you.
Everyone else around her quickly grabbed their evokers. The chairman sighed and frowned at the children.
How disappointing. I had hoped you would see the light. But you're just children, after all. I suppose it can't be helped.
He turned to the robot patiently awaiting orders beside him.
I guess. The time has come for you to fulfill your role. Capture them, and prepare them to be sacrificed. Understood.
The blonde girl nodded.
Energy output. At maximum. I guess.
Fuka shook her head as she tried to reach the robot.
What's wrong? I guess. Please.
The robot didn't seem to hear her as she took aim on the entire team.
Engaging,
she said as she jumped into the air.
I guess. Duh.
Hamuko cried out as Palladian appeared before them. Before anyone could fire their evoker in retaliation, everything went black. Takeharu was roughly pushed onto the observatory rooftop.
What is going on here?
He demanded to know as he looked up at the children crucified before him. Hamuko slowly stirred, but she jerked awake when she noticed she was suspended in the air. She looked down at her body and noticed she was completely bound to a cross made from steel girders. The junior lifted her head and noticed everyone else was tied up in the exact same way.
Everyone.
She called out.
Are you alright?
Junpei lifted his groggy head.
Am.
His eyes widened as he began pulling on his restraints.
What the hell?
Beside the capped boy, Yukari woke up.
What is this?
Fuki gasped as she found herself stuck in place. She looked over to Minato as he was the only one still unconscious. In fact, compared to the others, he seemed to be the one hurt the most.
Minato-kun. Fuke.
Minato frowned as he heard her calling out to him.
Hamuko.
His blue eyes flashed as he realized they were in danger.
Everyone.
He used whatever strength he could to free himself, but let out a painful groan as it hurt to move his body.
Damn it.
Akihiko growled.
I can't get these off.
Mitsuru watched as Aigas roughly pushed Takeharu towards them.
Father.
Takeharu glared at the glasses-wearing man smirking up at them.
Ikitsuki. What is the meaning of this? It is just as it appears.
The man answered him.
They are to be sacrifices, harbingers of the fall.
He madly smiled.
The arrangements are complete. The prophecy shall be fulfilled. What?
Akihiko fought harder against his restraints.
You son of a bitch.
Junpei spat out.
I'm gonna rip your head off. I'll burn you to hell.
Minato's blue eyes blazed in hatred.
Mai.
Ikitsuki snickered at the three teenage boys.
What a commotion.
He turned to his loyal weapon.
Aigas. Director, aim at Mr. Kirijo. Affirmative.
Aigas responded, aiming her gun at Takeharu.
Father.
Mitsuru screamed.
You traitor.
Takeharu glared at Ikitsuki.
Are you insane? Of course not.
The man smiled back.
You know your father was an unlucky man. Even you, his son, after all this time, do not understand his vision. My father was wrong.
The CEO shook his head.
Death is deliverance. That is not an ideology anyone should ever embrace. Boo.
Ikitsuki scowled at him.
You are but a nuisance now. I guess. Go on ahead and give this man his honorable deliverance. Wait.
Mitsuru desperately called out to the robot.
Please, I guess. No. I guess.
Minato screamed too.
You can't do this.
Hamuko joined him.
We won't let you become a murderer. I guess. Listen to us.
The robot heard their cries and glanced up to them. Ikitsuki noticed her falter and sternly frowned at the mechanical maiden.
What are you doing? I guess. You have your orders. Fulfill your purpose in life and fire. He's wrong, I guess.
Hamuko cried out.
Please, don't do it. I guess.
Minato called out to the blonde girl.
Listen to us. You're supposed to protect us, aren't you?
The blonde's blue eyes widened as she tried to focus on the twins. She lowered her gun in confusion.
Touch.
Ikitsuki shook his head as he pulled out a gun.
Fine, I'll do this myself.
He let out a grunt as he pointed the weapon at Takeharu.
10 years. I've wasted 10 long years. I'm not like your father. I won't make any exceptions.
He took aim, but Takeharu used Aigas' hesitation to break free of her grip. The head of the Kirijo group pulled a pistol out from his jacket and both men fired at each other. After a few seconds, Ikitsuki triumphantly laughed as Takeharu slumped to the floor. The gun he held dropped to the ground.
Father.
Mitsuru's red eyes widened.
Father.
She screamed in shock as the man didn't respond.
Damn it.
Ikitsuki stopped laughing to raise a hand to his side and press against where Takeharu had shot him.
I guess. We'll end this. Execute the sacrifices. Nah. Hamuko.
Minato's eyes widened as Aigas turned towards his sister first.
Ah.
He frantically pulled at his restraints as panic filled him.
I guess.
He hoarsely cried out and noticed the blonde lifted her weapon and took aim.
Bella? Stop. Nissan.
Hamuko tried to put on a brave face for her brother. Minato shook his head and screamed as he continued to struggle.
Hamuko.
Behind the boy, Fuka tried to call out to the robot.
I guess. Damn it.
Junpei shouted.
Snap out of it. Finish them, I guess.
Ikitsuki roared.
I guess. Don't.
Minato shook his head.
She's my twin sister.
He shoved back a sob as he finally exhausted himself.
Hamuko. Minato. Dan.
The robot frowned as she continued to stare at her target.
Hamuko-san. I guess.
Hamuko steadily looked into the android's eyes.
I believe in you, I guess. You're still in there. I know it.
She didn't waver as she tried to call out to her friend.
AI-chan.
Hamuko-san. Iga stared at her with wide eyes as she began shooting at the brunette.
Hamuko!
Minato screamed. He flinched as the bonds holding up him shattered. He dropped on the ground and looked back to see Hamuko safely land on her feet. Letting out a shaky breath, he lifted his head towards the robot that freed them.
Igas. Whoa.
Akihiko carefully dropped to the ground and massaged his sore wrist.
What the?
He glanced at the robot in confusion.
Igas.
Yukari smiled as she was freed.
Damn it, you.
Ikatsuki glared at Igas.
You defective machine.
He pulled out a remote from his jacket.
I'll do it myself.
A sudden growl caught him off guard as a white beast jumped up, snatching the remote from the man. Koromaru nimbly landed and snarled at Ikatsuki.
What the? Wah!
The man fell to his knees, holding his blood-stained stomach.
Koromaru!
Ken cried out with a smile as he took the remote from the dog. Akihiko shook his head at the glasses-wearing man.
You're all alone now, and you're injured on top of that.
He pointed out.
Looks like this is it, Mr. Chairman.
Ikatsuki stared at the gun in his hand as he rose to his feet. Taking a few steps back, he maniacally laughed at the children standing before him.
You don't get it, do you?
The madman asked.
This useless, pathetic world will gradually fester over time. It's useless to search for hope or reasons to live in this pathetic world. A world as depraved must be started over from the beginning. Only its destruction can bring about its salvation.
He lifted the gun and pointed it randomly at the team. Just the sight of them tensing up made him laugh.
And then, at long last, I will rule over the new world.
A sharp pain in his abdomen made him wince. Ikatsuki frowned as he sensed his body could no longer continue on. The man took a few steps back.
I was so close.
He let out a broken laugh as he tried to grasp for the moon. The skies echoed with his laughter as a man fell off the observatory roof.
Ikatsuki!
Minato ran towards him and tried to grab him, but he was too late. He stared at his empty hand as his fingers had barely brushed against the man's jacket. The answers were all within my reach too. His hand balled into a fist.
Damn it.
Hikari lowered her gaze to the floor and frowned.
How did it come to this?
She asked no one in particular. Fuka looked up towards the edge where the chairman fell from.
Ikatsuki-san.
She frowned as she couldn't believe what had just happened. A soft sob caused her to look up at the official leader of Seas, kneeling over Takeharu's limp form.
Mitsuru-senpai.
Mitsuru gently shook her father's body.
Father.
She said as tears began streaming down her face.
Father.
The man didn't respond, so Akihiko took his place beside the student council president. The boxer gave her a comforting hug as she sobbed. Everyone turned towards the grieving girl and watched as she tried to pull herself together.
One time, my father made a promise. He swore that he would atone for endangering our generation, even if it cost him his life. But
The usually strong young woman faltered.
I wanted him to live. I became a person used to protect him.
Everyone remained silent as Mitsuru continued to cry. There was nothing they could do for the lamenting successor of the Kirijo group. Lost and confused, they remained on the top of the observatory as Tartarus towered over them, mocking them with its presence. End of chapter.